I never touched the patient, not once, not even a fingertip. But that night, my hands were covered in blood. So whose blood was it? Why was it on my scrubs, dripping down my wrists? And why couldn't I remember how it got there? There was a crash, screaming. The lights flickered in OR3, and then silence. Too much silence. I was holding a scalpel, but I wasn't scheduled to operate. I was just supposed to be observing. Then why was my name on the incident report? Why did the nurse look at me like I had killed someone? And the baby, there was a baby in the NICU next door. She wouldn't stop crying that night, but when I checked, the room was empty. No crib, no records, no baby. Was she ever real? I've spent every night since trying to piece it together, scrubbing my hands raw in the sink. Like maybe if I just washed long enough, the guilt would come off too. But there's something no one else knows. Something I haven't told anyone. Not the board, not the review committee, not even my therapist. Because I remember something now, something small. A breath. Just one shallow gasp after the flatline. And that's why I can't sleep. Because I don't know if it was real, or if I just imagined it to keep myself from breaking. But if it was real, then I might have walked away while she was still alive. What if the real mistake wasn't something I did, but something I chose not to do? And what if that choice cost someone their life? I wasn't supposed to be in that room. Not that night, not in that procedure. I was just an observer, a fourth-year cardiothoracic resident doing an elective rotation in trauma surgery. I didn't even have scrubs on when the page came through. Code red, or try, stat. There was no hesitation. I ran. That's what we do, right? Even if you're not the surgeon on call, even if your only job is to watch, you run. The hallway lights buzzed as I passed under them. One flickered, burnt yellow glow. I remember thinking, that bulb's going out. Funny what your brain chooses to notice during chaos. By the time I pushed the double doors open, there was blood already on the floor. Not much, but enough to make your stomach turn. They were losing her. 15 years old, blunt chest trauma, car accident, crushed ribs, internal bleeding. She still had her school ID clipped to her backpack. I saw it lying in the corner, face down, just forgotten. There were 3 surgeons in the room, all seniors, all better than me. But I was the only one standing still. The rest were moving fast, hands, clamps, suction, calls for more blood, a nurse sobbing silently behind her mask, and me, I stood frozen, until someone shouted, "We need another set of hands." That's when everything changed. I stepped forward. I shouldn't have, but I did, gloves on, mask up, hands shaking, heart pounding. They were trying to crack her chest. They couldn't get the retractor in deep enough. There was too much blood. And the attending doctor saw. He yelled, "Hold her steady." So I did. I gripped her shoulders hard. I felt her body spasm once. That was the last time she moved. Seconds later, flatline. Everything stopped. Monitors, hands, voices, it all just shut down. Dr. Saul slammed his fist on the tray, swore, tore off his gloves, and walked out. They called time of death. 1:14 a.m. I stood there, still holding her. Her blood on my gloves, her eyes half open, staring at the ceiling like she wanted to tell me something but never got the chance. I didn't even know her name, and then something strange happened. As I backed away, the lights flickered again, just like in the hallway, and I swear I heard it. A sound, not in the room, from beyond the wall, a baby, crying. I turned to the nurse beside me. "You hear that?" She shook her head. "What?" "The crying." But it was gone, just like that. She looked at me weird, tilted her head. "You okay, doctor?" I nodded, even smiled a little, and walked out like nothing had happened. Like that girl wasn't still warm. like her blood wasn't seeping through my sleeves. I didn't file a report, I didn't speak at the debrief, I told no one I held her when she died. I wasn't listed on the surgical team, I was never supposed to be in that room. But her blood was on my hands, and no matter how many times I scrubbed, it wouldn't come off. 2 days later, I saw her face on the news. But the name listed wasn't hers, it was someone else. Someone who shouldn't have been on that table. And that's when I realized this wasn't a surgical mistake. It was something else. Something darker, more deliberate. And I wasn't an observer anymore. I was a witness, or maybe an accomplice. And at first, I thought it was just a typo, another intern. Overworked, sleep-deprived, typing too fast. I've done it myself. Swapped a vowel, inverted 2 letters. No big deal, right? But this wasn't that. This wasn't a mistake. It was a rewrite. 2 days after the surgery, after her death, I got a notification. A flagged incident report. Patient fatality in OR 3, July 2nd, 1:14 a.m. Her name was listed as Emily Hartwell. Age 14. No family listed. Died during emergency thoracotomy. Surgeons of record, Dr. Saul, Dr. Harper, Dr. Lynn, except that wasn't her name. I know it wasn't. I saw her face. I saw the school ID clipped to her torn backpack. The name was Jasmine El-Amin, not Emily, not Hartwell, and definitely not anonymous. She had a mother. I saw her in the ER screaming, pounding on the glass. Security had to hold her back. She kept shouting, "That's my daughter in there." So why wasn't she listed? Why did the file say no next of kin? Why was Jasmine's name erased? I tried to ignore it. I told myself, this isn't your lane. This isn't your fight. You're just a resident. But it gnawed at me, like something was rotting beneath the surface. So I did what I shouldn't have. I went into the internal EMR logs, accessed through my credentials, searched for Jasmine El-Amin, nothing, not a single record. No ER intake, no trauma alert, no scans, no vitals, no evidence she ever existed. Except I saw her, I held her, she bled on my hands, she died in that room, so how the hell was she a ghost? That night, I went back to the hospital. 2:17 a.m. badge access was limited after hours, but I knew which doors would let me through. I found her backpack, still in the biohazard bin, still tagged, still labeled, but the name on it had changed, a new label, new handwriting, Emily Hartwell. Except the old one, the one beneath, was still faintly visible through the plastic. J. El-Amin, written in red marker. I wasn't imagining her. Someone was burying her, on purpose. The next morning, I went to medical records. Asked casually, "Hey, weird question. Was there a transfer of identity for that fatality in Oregon 3? The clerk blinked. Smiled too fast. "Sorry, can't help. Confidential case." I nodded, walked out, but she followed me to the elevator, slipped a note into my pocket, 4 words, scrawled in shaky ink. She was never admitted. That's when the dread kicked in, not guilt, not grief, fear. Because if Jasmine El-Amin was never officially admitted, if her entire presence in that hospital was unrecorded, then who brought her in? And more importantly, why did they want her to disappear? I started reviewing the security footage. Old cameras. No audio. But the ER entrance had 3 angles. At 12:39 a.m., a black van pulled into the ambulance bay. No lights, no siren. 2 men stepped out. Not medics, no uniforms, no ID. They rolled in a stretcher, covered, no face visible, straight through the side entrance, no check-in. 23 minutes later, that girl was on our table, so who brought her in? And what were they trying to hide? When I confronted Dr. Saul, he didn't deny anything, didn't even look surprised. He just said, "You want to keep your license? Then don't go looking for names that shouldn't exist." I know what a flat line looks like. I've seen dozens, hundreds maybe. The sudden drop, the silence after chaos, the finality of it. But this one, something felt off. It wasn't just the stillness in the room, it was the stillness inside me. Like everything went quiet. Not just around me, but within me too, like the world exhaled and never inhaled again. But even in that silence, I heard it, a sound that didn't belong, a gasp. It was faint, software maybe even imagined, but I swear on everything, I heard it. Just one breath, shallow, panicked, alive. And then the machine went flat. The room turned cold. Dr. Saul tore off his gloves. Everyone walked out like it was over, but it wasn't. Not for me. I stood by her body, waiting for something. Anything. A twitch, a reflex, a second chance. It never came. Or maybe I didn't wait long enough. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it. Frame by frame, the moment her chest dropped, the moment the line flattened, the almost of it all. And then I remembered something. The retractor. We never fully cracked her chest. There wasn't enough exposure. Dr. Lin said we didn't get to the pericardium. They couldn't have seen the full bleed. They guessed she was gone. They never confirmed. And that breath, what if it was real? What if we let her die because we gave up too soon? I had to know. I needed proof. So I went back to the morgue. 2:41 a.m. I signed in under a fake name. Nobody questioned me. Too many bodies. Too little staff. I found her drawer. Unlabeled. No ID tag. Just a number. 367B. When I slid her out, she looked exactly the same. Except her eyes were shut. They were open when I left the OR, half-lidded, staring upward. But now, closed. It wasn't rigor mortis. I checked. I know how eyes behave after death. Someone closed them. And then her arm. There was something written. Faded ink along the underside of her wrist. Almost scrubbed off. Just 2 words. Help me. That's when I stepped back. Heart racing, palms sweating. I thought I was hallucinating, losing it. But the ink was real, the words were there, and her skin, it was still warm. Not body temperature warm, but not what you'd expect from a corpse after 48 hours. I touched her neck. Nothing. I checked again, still nothing, but part of me knew. Knew this didn't make sense, knew the facts didn't align. So I asked for the autopsy. Dr. Saul said there wasn't going to be one. Said the family waived it. Except there was no family on file. So who waived it? I asked again. He said, "Let it go, doctor." And then he smiled. That kind of smile that makes your blood turn cold. He knows. He knows I saw the label. He knows I found her body. He knows I won't stop. The next morning, my badge access was revoked. No reason given. Security just told me, "You've been reassigned." Reassigned to psych for observation. Now I'm the patient, the one they're watching, taking notes on, calling unstable. But I know what I saw, I know what I felt, and I know this. She wasn't dead when they left the OR. Maybe dying, maybe unconscious, but not gone. And if she was still alive, where is she now? It started as a sound, barely audible, just on the edge of sleep. A cry. Software desperate. Not human, not fully. Like something remembering how to scream. At first, I thought it was in my head, stress, sleep deprivation, hallucinations. But the third night in psych, I heard it again. Same time, same pitch. Always behind the wall. I asked the night nurse, "Do you hear that?" She blinked, paused, then turned up the volume on the TV. "No, doctor, you should rest." But I couldn't. I followed the sound, pressed my ear to the plaster behind the cot, and I heard it. It wasn't just crying anymore, it was words, faint, flickering. as if filtered through concrete and time. Help. Me. Please, I didn't die. It was her. Jasmine. She wasn't gone. She was somewhere in this building, and I was locked in a room with padded walls and no pen. The next morning, I demanded to speak to admin, said I had information about a cover-up. A living patient declared dead. A false report. The psych evaluator nodded slowly, scribbled something in her notes, said, "And this patient, you believe she's speaking through the walls?" I snapped. "No, I don't believe it. I hear it." She didn't respond, just reached for the panic button under the desk. That night, they increased my dosage, haloperidol. I pretended to swallow it, let it dissolve under my tongue. Waited. And at 2:11 a.m., the crying returned. Only this time, I followed it. I wedged the metal stand between the door and the floor, slipped into the hallway barefoot. No one noticed. No one ever notices the ones already labeled broken. The sound led me to sublevel B. Old maintenance wing. Abandoned for years, or so they claimed. The door was locked, but the emergency panel had been jimmied open. Not recently, not cleanly, but purposefully. Inside, dust, peeling paint, metal piping overhead, groaning like dying animals. And then, the sound, a baby, crying, but distorted, mechanical, looped. I followed it through the corridor, each step louder, each turn tighter, and then a door, unmarked, steel, slightly ajar. Inside, a single metal bed, restraints, old monitor cables coiled like snakes on the ground, and on the far wall, scribbled in what looked like dried blood, "They buried her alive." That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Behind me. I turned. Nothing. Turned again. Light flickered, buzzed, then silence. Except for the sound behind the wall. Not crying, breathing, a pattern, shallow, erratic, alive. I pressed my hand against the wall. It was warm. I whispered, "Jasmine?" And from the other side, "I'm still here." I stumbled back, ran. Didn't care if they caught me. Didn't care what they said. I needed to know. Was she trapped behind that wall, hidden in some forgotten ward? Or was this hospital built on something worse? Not silence, not incompetence, but intention. Later, in the psych ward again, the nurse came in quietly. She leaned close and whispered, "You need to stop digging." I looked up, confused, afraid. She added, "They don't lose patients here, doctor. They erase them. The walls didn't bleed. They breathed." And by the time I realized that, it was already too late. After what happened in the sublevel, I was pulled from the psych ward, no warning, no paperwork. They said I was being transferred. Administrative leave. Pending evaluation. But there was no HR rep, no form to sign. Just two men in unmarked scrubs and silence thick enough to choke on. I thought they were taking me out. But they weren't. They were taking me deeper. Somewhere between the old pediatric wing and the unused East Annex, there's a door that doesn't exist on any blueprint. No signage, no badge access. Just a keypad, and a number I didn't know I remembered. 0-7-1-4. Jasmine's birthday. I saw it on the ID, or thought I did. The door clicked open. What I found inside wasn't a patient room. It wasn't a morgue. It was something else. Colder, quieter, crueler, a laboratory steel tables, labeled containers, framed x-rays on light boards, and in the center, a body wrapped in surgical sheeting, toe tag hanging loose. I peeled it back, slowly, afraid, and what I saw wasn't Jasmine. It wasn't even human. Or maybe it used to be. Her face, stitched, mouth sealed, eyes empty sockets, the skin waxy, unreal. But the worst part was the chest. It had been opened, but not repaired, explored, labeled, numbered, tested, catalogued. This wasn't a hospital, it was an experiment. And she wasn't the only one. There were drawers lining the far wall, each one tagged, most empty, 2 still sealed. One had my name on it, Dr. Caleb Monroe. I stared at it, trembling, confused. How? Why? What was this? And then I remembered the nurse's words. They don't lose patients here, doctor, they erase them. But what if they didn't just erase patients? What if they erased witnesses? I stumbled backward, nearly knocked over the metal tray. Something clattered, a file. I opened it. Top page, Neurological Integrity Evaluation. Monroe, Caleb. Underneath, notes. Subject unaware of prior programming. Behavioral deviation increasing. Recommend containment or repurpose. My throat closed. My ears rang. The ink on the paper looked fresh. But the photo attached, it wasn't from last week. It was from years ago. From med school, before the hospital, before I ever met Jasmine, except I never went to med school, not that year, not in that state. And Jasmine, how did I know her name? I never saw her chart, never met her family. The ID, had I really seen it, or was it all a script? The final page in the file stopped my breath. It was a list, 4 columns. Recovered, reset, rejected, reassigned. My name was circled in red, reassigned. I wasn't her doctor, I wasn't her savior, I wasn't even myself. I was part of the protocol. She didn't die on that table. She never lived at all. She was created. So was I. Test against test, program against program. They weren't covering up a death. They were controlling a narrative. And I wasn't the observer. I was the observed. Now I sit here, telling you this, in a room they say is for recovery. White walls, steel door, no clocks. They think I'm still broken, still confused. But I'm not. Because last night, after lights out, I heard it again. Not a baby, not crying, but a voice, mine, saying the words I'd never spoken aloud. I never touched the patient. But that night, my hands were covered in blood. Only this time, I wasn't the one saying it. Because maybe I was never meant to survive the story, just to tell it.